One of the biggest parks in the new Six Flags chain is none other than Kings Island. And today on this episode of Roller Coaster Rants, we're going to find out which are our favorite coasters at the park. Welcome to this episode of Roller Coaster Rants. I'm Marcus.
And I'm Ryan.
And today we are going to deep dive into what our rankings are for one of the best parks, in our opinion anyway, in this new Six Flags chain, and that is Kings Island.
Yep, it's going to be essentially both your home park for a long time and my home park now that I'm living in the Cincinnati area. So we have a lot of reps on these rides, and let us know if you agree, if you disagree, what your order would be, and we can talk down below. But here's our top 15 ranked coasters at Kings Island.
And we say 15 because the Kings Island website lists 16, but we're not including Surf Dog because we technically don't think that it is a roller coaster. So I'm going to start us off with number 15, and we've got to go through the kiddie credits because they are roller coaster credits after all. And the first one is the Great Pumpkin Coaster. It is an E&F Miller Industries children's coaster, and it came to Kings Island in 1992. I rode it as a kid as Top Cat's Taxi Jam. Ryan hasn't gotten that credit yet, but it's no surprise. It's the bottom of the list here.
Yep, and moving right on to number 14, we've got another kiddie credit, and it's going to be Woodstock's Air Rail. It's a Vekoma suspended coaster, and it came to the park in 2001. I've heard pretty much all bad things from it.
It's got some head rattle.
I heard it's pretty rough, which is kind of ironic for a kid's coaster. But you see that a lot, actually. A lot of janky, rough rides for kid coasters. But yeah, that's going to come in at number 14, Woodstock's Air Rail.
Number 13 is Woodstock's Express, and that was actually one of the original coasters for the park, and it was developed by the Philadelphia Toboggan Company and opened with the park in 1972. I rode it as the Beastie, and I will advocate to this day it should be renamed as the Beastie to go along with the icon of the Beast. But it's a solid Woody. It's obviously not going to be in the mid-tier section because it is still a family wooden coaster, but nonetheless, a fun ride and one of my first coasters that I ever rode.
Yeah, and as we take a step up, going into more of the family coaster part of the lineup, and our number 12 is going to be Snoopy's Soapbox Racers, new for 2024. It's going to be a Vekoma family boomerang, and it's a very enjoyable ride. It's not too thrilling. But it doesn't need to be. It's fun for all ages, and there's definitely nothing wrong with it. And it's themed really well as well. So
super smooth, and I think that it's just a really good fit for this park as it kind of transitions to the midsection of the awesome coaster lineup that Kings Island offers, and that is going to number 11. And that is a Premier Rides launch coaster, opened up in 1996, none other than Flight of Fear. Ryan and I, if you've listened to the podcast, you know good and well that we are not really in love with this coaster, but that's not to say that it still is deserving at this point in the rankings, just outside the top 10. I love the launch. The launch is a lot of fun, but from the full ride perspective, it's just rough and just not super enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Not a big fan. I get the appeal, just not for me. And moving along to number 10, we've got Invertigo. It's going to be a Vekoma inverted boomerang, one of the very few in operation in the world. And it's, at first I wasn't a huge fan like the first time I rode it, but it's grown on me a little bit. It's very forceful, and it can be a good ride if it's not too rough on you. That is the thing. Just with the format, the head banging and the head rattling, it can get to you and make it a little not enjoyable. But opening up in 1999, it acts its age, and a lot of people think it's on the chopping block for Kings Island. So all things considered, I think it's a decent middle tier ride.
Yeah, it definitely. I've gone on record and said that it hurts, and even whenever you keep your head pressed against the back of the seat, it's rough. But agree that its action zone in that area is on the talks of getting rethemed. So if you haven't gotten the credit, definitely need to go and try and get that credit soon. So in Vertigo, number 10, still deserving. I mean, it just speaks to just how deep of a lineup that Kings Island has. At number 9, we've got Backlot Stunt Coaster, and it's a Premier Ride special effects coaster. Originally opened up as the Italian Job, and that opened up in 2005 whenever Paramount still owned the park. It's fun, especially if you have watched the Italian Job, and now with it being the Backlot Stunt Coaster, some of the effects and elements don't really go with it because the branding of the movie was stripped away. But nonetheless, it's a fun, very short ride. I love the back half, going inside the tunnel after the helicopter sequence. So a lot of fun nonetheless.
Yeah, definitely a fun ride. I agree with that. It's
Super
not
short.
going to be too. It's not going to be too crazy on the forces, but it's a good time. And of the premiere launches, definitely my favorite at Kings Island for sure. I like it a lot more than Flight of Fear. So that was number 9. Going into number 8, we've got a completely different kind of ride, and it's going to be the Racer, and that opened all the way back in 1972. It opened up with the park, and it's still really good time, and it's not nearly as rough as you would think. They work on it, they retrack it, they take good care of it. Really good rides on it this year. You get good airtime in the back for sure. It's a racing format, so of course with the name, it's got two different. You got the red and the blue. And it's made by Philadelphia Toboggan Company, PTC, and it's got those old classic PTC trains. And it kind of it fits really well with the park. It's in a good place, and it's a fun ride for sure.
It's a fun ride. I mean, I think a couple of years ago there were a couple of potholes on it, but like you said, they've retracked it, and it's just whenever it's nighttime, you're getting a night ride. You've got the kind of the boardwalk, just old Coney Mall type vibes because it's in the Coney Mall section of the park. It's just a lot of fun, and I think that it again is at the middle part of the lineup because it offers a good ride, and it's still thrilling too, and just some comfortable airtime as well. Number 7 is an Aero Runaway Mine Train, and that is Adventure Express, and quite frankly it's one of my favorite sleeper coasters at this point in the lineup. I always find myself going to this coaster, and I love night rides on it, especially whenever they don't have the lights on in the tunnels. It's pitch black, kind of in the valley that it sits in. Just a well done Aero Runaway Train, which opened up in 1991. It's just got that jankiness that an Aero provides, kind of whips you around a little bit, can pop the back, but it's a lot of fun, and I have to ride it every single time that I go to the park.
Yeah, again, I agree with pretty much everything you said. It's it's an old model, an Aero Mine Train, but it's one of the best in the world. So definitely worth riding whenever you're there. It's not going to knock your socks off. It's not a top ride of the park, but for middle tier, it is solid for sure.
Yeah.
Now going into number 6, another underrated one, we think, and we love this ride, and we've heard rumors of it being on the chopping block, which is, I understand, but
it's unfortunate because it's such a good ride.
But we disagree, and that is the Bat, which is another Aero. It's an Aero Suspended, which we probably think is the best Aero Suspended coaster out there. So these kind of niche kind of ride categories, they've got two of the best. Made in 1993, so just after Adventure Express, and it's just a really fun ride. You're hanging down, you've got the swinging. It's kind of, I've heard people say it's almost like a family coaster, but it is actually pretty intense and pretty thrilling for sure.
It's got some solid G's.
First Drop's really good on it, and it's a solid part of the lineup. It's kind of tiered out, and this is the top of the non-top tier.
Yeah.
And it is really far out of the way from the rest of the whole park, which is kind of why I think it's on the chopping block. It's kind of just out on its own on the far left of the park. But it's very fun nonetheless. I really like the Bat, and outside of the top 5, which kind of separated a lot from the middle tier, I think it's the best one. So
yeah, it being out of the way, and just like kind of I alluded to just a little bit ago, the action zone theme. I definitely think that unfortunately could hurt this coaster and take it away. Definitely don't want to see it go because it's fantastic and just outside the top 5. But getting into the top 5, and again, I think that this is the point of the Kings Island lineup, that you can ask 10 different people and you're going to get 10 different answers on what these top 5 are.
Genuinely. And
Genuinely,
we have different answers as well. Our top 5 are all jumbled, so we kind of had to consensus rank this.
So we had to go in together and add, there was some debate between us, but ultimately we kind of gave our rankings, meshed them to our individual rankings together to make this condensed list for you.
Yeah, I think this is the downside and the upside, I guess, to Kings Island, is that your top 5, they're all interchangeable. They're all right next to each other. They're all great rides. You just don't have that, like, epic for sure number 1, which is, of course, what we want Kings Island to get in the next few years. But it does make for this list being really interesting, because who knows what we're going to have in the top 5. We'll let you know, though.
Well, here we go. We're going to start it off. Number 5, and that's going to be the icon, the Beast. It debuted in 1979, and it has been taking riders for epic night rides ever since. I love the Beast. It's always a go-to. I feel like in recent years, it's not as rough, you could say, in my opinion. Especially my parents, they're in their 60s. They used to never ride the Beast because they didn't enjoy the roughness. And this past year was actually a lot of fun. My dad just kept going, let's go. And we rode it, I think, 5 or 6 times in a row. And it was so, with that said, it provides a very fun night ride. But I think that the fact that there is a huge disparity between the day ride and the night ride is why it lands itself at number 5 on our condensed list, because quite frankly, during the day, elements that don't really do as much at night, they end up doing quite a bit. And I think that disparity is why it's number 5.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said there for sure. There's a lot of and it's just because it's so old, it was developed in-house and those kind of things. There's a lot of just straight track doing nothing. But there's also a lot of, really good elements. The helix at the end is incredible.
That second half is awesome.
It's one of the best elements on a coaster at Kings Island for sure. And it is a really good night ride. It's a decent day ride. I've just... half the time I'm like, okay, that was a good ride. Half the time I'm like, okay, I was a little disappointed. And I don't think I've ever gotten off the Beast and just been like shell shocked at how good it was. I know it might be biased just because my home park will always be Holiday World. So I've had like elite night rides, and to me, the Beast isn't just like an absolutely elite night ride. I know that's probably a hot take. But I think number 5 is a good spot for it. It definitely was my number 5. I actually think it was your number 4.
Yep.
But it's fun. It's a good ride. And for a number 5 roller coaster in a park, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's just kind of just misses the cut on our top 4. But again, I'd understand if people had that as their number 1. Totally.
Yeah.
It's so iconic.
And I think that's why this list is so fluid for each person that you ask, because there are so many different reasons that go into a top 5 ranking for Kings Island.
Exactly. All right, going into number 4, we've got Banshee. And I actually hear a lot of enthusiasts don't like the restraints. They don't like how it's not as whippy as most inverts. But that's some of the reasons I love it. I get you don't get as much airtime with the restraints. You also don't have headbanging with the restraints, which is nice. And it's just, and it being not whippy, it's a different kind of vibe than most B&M inverts. It's very very fast. It's got high looping. It's always a good ride for me every time I go on it, whether it's day, whether it's night, and very smooth. It's just for me, it's a fun ride. It's a lot more consistent than the Beast for me, for sure.
Ultimately, I agree with everything that you said. I think that it's just a very intense ride. The fact that it doesn't hit the top speed until I think right there in the middle of the pretzel roll. it's just such a fun night ride. I don't go to it every single time that I'm at Kings Island, and my coaster count on Log Ride reflects that, and I think that that's kind of why I have it at my number 5. But it's still nonetheless a very fun ride, and an elite night ride too. I mean, that valley that you go in is uber dark. And so, yeah, just a really good ride. I echo everything that Ryan said. Now to the top 3. And this is where it can get questionable, even more so, because any 3 of these coasters could be the number 1. But you're going to see us, when you hear a Giga, you think it would be the number 1 in the park. But on our list, it is not. It is number 3. Orion debuted in 2020. It stinks because I feel like from the beginning, Orion was kind of just handicapped in a way, because not only was it, the right there at the cusp, people debate whether or not it is a Giga. In our opinion, it is. But then again, its opening season was kind of watered down too because of COVID. It didn't get to open up with the park in 2020 at the early opening day, all the hype. So nonetheless, getting those storylines out of the way, it's still a very incredible ride. I personally think the layout's a little bit short, but the first drop is awesome. If you're riding in the back, it whips you over that hill. If you're riding in the front, I mean, you've got 90 miles an hour of wind that's hitting you, especially if it's the slightest bit cold. It's an incredibly cold ride. So that's enough of me rambling. Ryan, just your thoughts on Orion too.
Yeah, so we kind of settled for Orion at 3. I have it 2 personally for me, and I love it. It's a Giga, it's bigger and faster than everything else. It's a great ride. It's very, very smooth. All the elements hit. It's very fast. In the back, you're gonna have crazy airtime, and it's just a very enjoyable ride. It's just short. If it were longer, it would be my number 1 at the park for sure. And I think that it gets a bad rap because it's just with the 287 feet, and then it's just not being like crazy. I mean, it followed Fury 325 for B&M, so it's like, it's like they went gigantic and then they kind of scaled it back a little bit. But that being said, it's still an amazing ride. And for a number 3 at a park, it's elite for sure.
Yeah.
So I love Orion. I just wish it was longer. But yeah, I mean, again, this whole top 5 are all like elite rides that I will never skip out. I know you said you don't always go to Banshee, but any of these top 5, I would want to do in every single trip I ever do at Kings Island. So, all right, going into number 2 is going to be Marcus's favorite ride of all time.
Yeah.
And that is going to be Diamondback. Made in 2009 from B&M. It's a hyper, and I think it's 235 feet, if my memory serves.
In that range, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's, the way it excels that Orion doesn't necessarily is, the airtime is just more of it. And there's just more elements that have crazy airtime, but it's very long. It's very scenic. You're going through the park. You've got the water touchdown at the very end, and it's just a super consistent ride. On any given day for me, Orion and Diamondback can be flip flop, flip flop, flip flop. They're both amazing rides. I hear the Diamondback has the rattle and everything. I really don't. It doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother me either,
to be honest. It's one of the few that has kind of the cool stagger seating, and yeah, I just enjoy it. I enjoy Diamondback, not as much as you, but I love me some Diamondback, and it's one that sometimes it's better in the back, sometimes it's better on the front, which I kind of like the kind of variety that you can get with it.
Yep.
But yeah, Diamondbacks are number 2.
Yeah, it's my favorite. And whenever I say favorite, it's the coaster I enjoy the most. It's not my number one as far as the coaster rankings go. I will, accept it. It's not going to be the number one on most people's coaster rankings, but I just love it because it just provides such a consistent ride. The floater airtime is amazing. And you're right. It just, sometimes you can ride the front and it provide a great ride. And then you want to go to the back and it's even better. And it can flip flop every single day. It's just such a consistent, enjoyable ride. It's smooth. Maybe there's some more vibrations in the back, especially on the back half there and going in the valleys of the hills, but it doesn't impact me in any whatsoever. It's just a really consistent ride, and I think that B&M got it right. It was pretty sure the first major investment that Cedar Fair made in Kings Island whenever they bought the park in the mid-2000s, and it was the first of just awesome investments from Cedar Fair from then till now. And I just echo kind of everything that you said. I love it. I'll ride it first and last every single time I go to Kings Island just because I love it so much. It is the coaster that I've ridden the most.
That's what you can kind of argue on Orion is they played it safe a little bit.
Yep.
And Diamondback, they definitely didn't. So
they went all out for it.
I'll give it the edge there for sure.
And now, number one, you should know it already based on these rankings, but it's going to be the GCI that opened up in 2017. None other than Mystic Timbers, and it's not the tallest coaster in the park. It's not the fastest coaster in the park, but according to our combined list and Roller Coaster Rants, says that it is the best ride in the park. And it is. Whether it's day, whether it's night, you're going to have a fun, intense ride on Mystic Timbers.
Yeah, its pacing is relentless. It feels like an RMC kind of on the pacing, and it could be a little longer. That'd probably be my one knock on it, but it's not short necessarily. It doesn't feel as short as Orion. And it's got a really good theme to it. It's just, it's open at like every event they do. So since it is open at Winterfest, that kind of gives it a little tiny bump, but it's an amazing, very consistent, well-rounded ride.
Yep.
I love Mystic Timbers. It's definitely my favorite. I know it's your number two.
Yep.
But it is my number one through and through. It is always a good ride, and it's another one where you can ride front, back, doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's always going to be good. So all the elements are always going to hit.
Yep.
And then it's got the wonderful shed as well.
Yeah, man. Don't go into the shed.
Don't go into the shed.
No, I think that Kings Island did a really good job all around on the coaster. I know that, some people think that the theming of the shed's kind of cheesy, especially being at the end of the coaster. But I think story-wise and coaster-wise, I think Kings Island did a really good job.
It's more interesting than 90% of other, stations. It's basically just a part of the station. So instead of sitting on the brake run, you're sitting and actually get something to do.
Get some cool music at the very least, and anticipating which monster you're going to get. So Mystic Timbers is our favorite coaster, number one coaster at Kings Island. And so, definitely let us know how wrong we are, or if you agree with us down in the comments below. We're going to continue doing these rankings videos for other parks that we visit as well. So be on the lookout for those videos. We've already done a Cedar Point rankings video, so go check that out on our channel. I think that overall, the lineup that Kings Island offers is incredible. 15 awesome coasters. You can go to Kings Island for multiple days and have a great time.
Yep, it's very, it's very good top to bottom. It's got a really good top five. We're just waiting for that, one chair, like the one just absolutely world-changing coaster, and then you're looking at it to have probably the second best lineup. If they get that one elite top 10 coaster, you're probably looking at second best lineup in the world. So as of right now, Cedar Point's still going to have the edge always, but that's just because it's Cedar Fair is
it's the flagship.
That's the Flagstaff Park. That's just the flagship park. This is going to happen. So tell us what you guys think. Otherwise, I think that's all for me.
It's all for this episode of Roller Coaster Rants. Be sure to tune in on the next one. We'll see you.